Chapter 6 of A Diamond in the Rough by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6, in which Fred beards the cracker boss in his den. Fred King started back in stupefied surprise, while the crowd of miners and the other spectators gaped in astonishment. "What do you mean?" gasped the boy. "I guess you know what I mean," said the constable significantly, tightening his grasp on the lad. "I guess you made a blunder, Jinks," interposed the big miner, stepping up. "I think not," replied the officer. "Why, such a charge against this boy is ridiculous," said the miner stoutly. "What's the trouble?" asked John Marsh, coming forward. "Jinks here has arrested King, who saved your daughter's life in such a heroic manner, on the charge of firing your cottage. I say it's absurd." "It is indeed," coincided Marsh. "On what ground do you accuse the boy?" "On the evidence of Jake Wise and Mr. Gummit. They are here, and you can question them. If there is any mistake, of course I won't take the boy." "Well," said Marsh, frowning upon the cracker boss and the tavern keeper, who now came forward, "what have you to say about it?" "We're coming along by the lane yonder afore the fire, when, just as it blazed up, we catch this young feller running away from it as hard as he could put, and we nabbed him." "That's a lie!" cried Fred hotly. "I wasn't running from the fire, but toward it, and you know it, 'cause I fell over where you were hidden behind a bush." "Don't you tell me a lie, or I'll smash you," retorted Wise in a threatening way. "Stop!" exclaimed John Marsh, catching his uplifted arm. "What else is there to your story?" "When he found he was catched, he fought Gummit and me and got away. That's the whole thing, and I can prove it by Gummit." And he looked at the tavern keeper for confirmation. "I am willing to swear to it," asserted Gummit, "'cause I was there." "You met these men, then, Fred?" asked Marsh kindly. "Remember, I haven't the slightest suspicion that you had anything to do with the fire." "I should say not," coincided the big miner decidedly. "What do you say, boys?" appealing to the crowd surrounding them. "Aye, aye, that's right," came from a dozen mouths. "Yes, sir, I met these men, and they were hiding in the bushes as I came along." "What?" roared Wise. "The idea," said Gummit, throwing up his hands. "That's what you were, or I shouldn't have tumbled over you." "You young villain," began Wise, but Marsh checked him. "You've had your say, now let the boy tell his story." "That's only fair," said the big miner. "Spit it out, Fred." "I went to Wilkes-Barre tonight to see a friend of mine. On the way back I was waylaid by Moses Wise and Mickey Gibbs, who tried to do me up in the wood, in revenge, I suppose, for the licking I gave Moses last evening." "And I'm going to lick you for doing it," cried Wise in a threatening manner. "You'd better not," interposed the big miner significantly. "What have you got to say about it?" demanded Jake angrily. "Well, you just lay your hand on him and see. Your boy ought to be big and strong enough to take his own part. You just keep out of it." "Moses and Mickey tried to down me with big chunks of coal," went on Fred. "Besides, Gibbs had a club and Moses a horsewhip. I waited till they came out into the road to look for me, and then I went for 'em both and laid 'em out myself. Then I saw the fire through the trees and started for it, tumbling over Jake Wise, as I said before. They grabbed me and said they believed I had set fire to the cottage and were going to turn me over to the constable when I gave 'em the slip and came on here. That's the whole story, sir." "And I believe you, my boy," said Marsh. "You believe anything from that kid," said Wise with a sneer, "'cause you're stuck on him. Well, it ain't none of my business. It's your loss, and if you're willing to stand for it, of course you can, I suppose. Maybe you're thinking of making a good thing out of the insurance." Maliciously. "Perhaps you'll explain why you were hiding in the bushes so near this place when the fire started?" asked Marsh significantly, for a strong suspicion against these two men was forming in his mind. He understood how they regarded him. "Who says we was hiding?" demanded Wise with apparent indignation. "You heard Fred King say so, didn't you?" "He was lying to save himself." "That's what he was," backed up Gummit. "Well, I want both of you to understand I'm going to have this fire thoroughly investigated," said John Marsh sternly. "I'm not sure but it will be a loss to me, but as I haven't yet received my signed receipt for the coming year's premium, which I mailed to the company 3 days ago." "What about the boy?" asked Constable Jinks. "The lad is not to be arrested," said John Marsh decidedly. "Then I guess I'll go home again," said the village officer, and he walked off. "I'm much obliged to you, neighbors all," said the engineer of the Black Diamond Colliery, "for turning out and saving the larger part of my property." "You're welcome, John Marsh," said the big miner, who constituted himself spokesman for the crowd, "for we all know you'd do the same for us." "That I would," replied Marsh heartily, "though I hope there will be no occasion, for fire is a dreadful thing, and not easily conquered once it gets a good hold." Then the crowd broke up and went home in twos and threes, and the first to go were Jake Wise and Gummit, the tavern keeper. Next morning Jake Wise appeared in the screen room in a villainous humor. The slate pickers took warning from his appearance and avoided anything which might give their boss offense. But it didn't avail them much. He watched his slaves with the eye of a hawk, seemingly looking for an excuse to pinch into them. As a matter of course, he soon found the chance, and little Eddie Foster happened to be the first victim. He rushed upon the little fellow and dealt him a severe blow with his blacksnake whip across the shoulders before he was aware of his approach. Eddie cried aloud in pain, and all the boys looked up with looks of unspoken sympathy for their companion. This aroused Jake's anger to a fearful pitch, and with many oaths he proceeded to ply the whip with impartial severity upon the others, thrashing every boy in the entire place in the most savage manner. "You little imps!" he foamed at the mouth. "I'll make examples of every one of you before I'm done." While performing this task he seemed like the beast of prey more than a man. He rushed around the screen room in a rage and seemed to revel in his brutal task. The cries and frantic appeals for mercy only served to whet his appetite. The little slaves now began to think he had actually gone mad and regarded him with eyes full of horror. He had always been a cruel tyrant, but never had he gone to such an extreme as on the present occasion. At last he hit one of the biggest boys, a particular friend of Fred King's, over the head with his rawhide. This lad, whose name was Billy Davis, smarting under the terrible blow, which for the moment drove him half wild with pain, seized a huge chunk of coal and with it dealt the cracker boss a stunning blow on the head, inflicting a deep gush from which the blood spurted freely and ran down his face. The blow maddened Jake Wise. He rushed forward and seized Davis by the throat with one hand, dragged him out on the floor, and began to rain blow upon his little body, till the rest of the lads, seeing he would certainly kill their comrade, attacked him from all sides. Still holding on to his fainting victim, he plied the rawhide around him, striking the boys anywhere he could reach them, and with such good effect that they were obliged to draw off. Then Wise returned to the object in hand, and recommenced beating Davis. Eddie Foster, in great terror, ran down and out of the building and almost into the arms of Fred King, who was crossing the yard at the time. "Oh, oh!" gasped Eddie in a paroxysm of excitement. "Save him! Save him!" "What's the matter, Eddie?" asked Fred, holding the boy up. "The boss has beaten Billy Davis to death. Save him!" Fred didn't wait to hear any more. He knew what an ungovernable temper Wise had when aroused. Word had already reached the engine room that Jake was in a fiendish humor that morning. Then, too, Fred could hear the most heart-rending shrieks from the direction of the screen room. He had been through the mill himself and sympathized with the little slate pickers. So on the spur of the moment he rushed up into the breaker, arriving there just as Jake, having whipped Billy almost into a state of insensibility, was about to bring the heavy handle down on the poor lad's head with the intention of finishing his cruel work. With a cry of anger, Fred dashed forward and tore the rawhide from the cracker boss's hand. End of chapter 6.